Yeah, it's all coming through now.
Is it? Okay.
Yep, you're streaming live.
Now I can't see you, mate.
I'm here.
You're back. So we're live on Facebook. Excellent. And we'll just give it a little bit of time. The mother-in-law's on. She's up your way, mate. She's a bribey.
Oh, nice.
On bribey. In bribey. In a wrong.
Beautiful place.
Is indeed. Is indeed. Hello, Donna. Wow. And Lionel, I'm guessing. We'll just give it a minute or two. Won't be long, guys, and we'll kick it off. Greyhound's sound asleep in the background, so she's not going to disturb us. Had a feed, had a run, did the whole thing. She's a happy girl. Might just give it another minute or so and kick in from there. Okay, I've got to remember to look at the camera, not over here, over this spot. So, well, we might make a start. So tonight we're this is the second one we're holding of these webinars, and tonight's theme is are we giving away our authenticity and trying to fit in into community or a set of beliefs? And Jason has joined us from the quantum movement again. So before I start though, we've got people from different parts of the world joining us tonight. I know we've got people in the UK who will be watching this recording or watching the recording later. So, and as well as Italy as well. My family's decided to jump on. So good evening, good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. And to my family in Italy, which is quite funny because they don't actually speak English. So for my cousin's daughter and my dad, and even then things get seriously lost in translation, so God knows what will be communicated. So to them, buongiorno e grazie per essere qui. So good evening and thanks for joining us. As always, much gratitude and love for joining us tonight. We are here for an hour and I would really like to get real with this because if I had to be candid, shit is going down here in Australia at the moment. It has for a while, in my opinion, and it seems that people and momentum is getting huge and it is shifting significantly by the minute. It's happening in just about every state across Australia and at every level of government. Even today, and I don't watch mainstream media, I haven't for a few months now quite deliberately, but I still get stuff fed to me, and apparently ScoMo has come out and is looking to kill or cancel the state's authority for the Belt and Road Initiative, which me personally, I think that's the best thing I've heard in a long time, as well as one of the ministers that may well be Greg Hunt, who's getting a little bit agitated about the borders being closed or and the impact that's having on trade. So I'm going to ask tonight that we step out of what is comfortable for us and to ask questions. It is the only way we'll step out of what is truly holding us back and into a space where we can create whatever it is we want to create. We've kind of created this environment by not asking enough questions. So please challenge, critique, question everything. We're all about sharing, and it's for you guys. And for that, we need you to be part of this. So please ask away. And with that, knowing tonight's theme, which again, I'll just give it to you, is, are we giving away our authenticity in trying to fit into community or a set of beliefs? Can I get you all to think about one question that you would ask about tonight and just write it down, just on that very title? Are we giving away our authenticity in trying to fit into community or a set of beliefs? Just write it down. If you want to pop it in the chat, that would in the Q&A, that'd be fantastic. But at least try and think about that very statement. And if you can, that'd be wonderful. We really would encourage it. I won't do intros tonight because they're on. We did them last week, and if you want to go to the Quantum Movement Facebook page, you can see last week's webinar, and our information on who we are is there. I may look down from time to time because I have my notes and I like to refer to them, and I did my eyeglasses exercises today, which Gary and Juliana were happy, so I'm trying not to wear my glasses when I look down and read. So when Jason and I spoke about the title this week, it got me thinking a lot about what is happening in this most amazing time. And it truly is an incredible time. And I thought of a quote, and I think it was George Patton, that said, if everyone is thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking. If everyone is thinking alike, then someone isn't thinking. I'm pretty sure that was it. And I'm pretty sure it was George Patton. If not, it was someone who came up with a pretty good line. And in today's world, you might argue that we are not all thinking alike when you look at those who are following the position of the government and the public health officials, and those that have a polar opposite view to the government and the health officials. But I think it does apply, at least through what I've seen. I'm part of many communities on different tech platforms that support both positions. And I do this because it's the only way I can try to apply an empath lens or an empath's lens into my thinking and into my writing. I don't troll, I don't criticise anyone on there. I post respectful comments, and hopefully it gets people thinking. And say for one comment on the Australian Labor Party page, on their community page, I've never been criticised for my views. In fact, I've had many positive comments, which has always been great. But what is apparent within the two cohorts is that people in this group are mostly thinking alike. And for me, it can be a bit of an echo chamber with people all hearing the same thing and wanting the best outcome built on the momentum of what they know, which is mostly aligned to the groups they join. But even then I'd question, well, what are you bringing to it to actually want to be part of that movement? Look, I think it's natural and understandable. Do it myself. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's not a judgment. It's just something that I think each of us probably need to have a think about as well. And it's pretty much the essence of what we're going to talk about tonight. It's a very interesting concept if you just sat and thought about the title of what we're going to talk about tonight. Most of us have jobs and would otherwise call that a community of sorts. And in my experience, at least in big corporate where I worked, we'd love to think that we are thinking differently, but the very essence of hierarchy suggests our thinking is influenced and limited within the confines of the executive leadership team and how they're positioning themselves in the business. Corporate is the same as politics, I guess, with that lens, in my opinion anyway. And so life in lockdown, at least here in Vic, is no different. You can have a community started by someone for whatever reasons they have. And that grows and builds with the narrative that is spoken within that community. And I think there's not a truer statement if you go to the Australian Labor Party website. For those of you that may have researched anxiety, suicide, and depression, and I've done a bit of that of recent weeks, you could argue that a failure to critically examine our beliefs makes us culpable for adverse outcomes. And I think there's a lot of truth in that as well. I think there's a real lot of truth in that. And right now in the age of social media, and especially for those who are into month 6 of lockdown, information and opinions are constantly bombarding us from all sides. And by doing so, I think they're actually isolating us from our own thoughts and our own values. A question I ask a lot of people that I help and coach is, what do you truly value? I did it with my nephew. I don't know if he's on tonight, but I did it with him recently. What do you truly value? And most of us think we value things like family, fitness, our job, liberties, whatever. It could be a spouse. But when you apply 2 critical factors to that, time and money, and I could put 3, critical thinking, but I'll leave it for the moment. It can often be an entirely different outcome, at least in my experience anyway. Quite a few people that I've helped have done an exercise that I learned through the DeMartini Institute, and they end up being shocked at to learn where they're spending their time and their money, because it's not congruent with their highest values. It's an important piece of work, and it definitely can open up a few inconvenient questions, as I learned, and truths, but conversely, many opportunities. And again, especially for us in lockdown, but not exclusively, as each state has its own problems and fractures, and we're seeing that right now. And who knows, I think any state could fall like a house of cards at the moment. There is no better time to critically examine our beliefs, especially our beliefs in the lockdown communities. And if I had to take it back to the beginning of March, our lockdown belief was formed when we felt legitimate fear about a virus that we couldn't see, but we believed was deadly, because that is what we were told. And that narrative remains true to this day. There may be opposing views to it, but the one controlling the narrative has not changed their view at all. That said, in the past 2 weeks, even the most leftist news outlets are starting to ask questions about those making the decisions. So information is everywhere, and we're not just in the information age. We are the information age, people. It is not apparent to everyone, and that's somewhat surprising. I've had these conversations with people, but anything we want to know is available through millions of search engine results. I mean, you just take your pick. And if you continually pick from the top of the list, it doesn't make it the most popular or the most accurate, just the most paid for. We know, because we run a small business, and Gary would know all about the SEO stuff and the money you pay to get your business promoted up the line. But my point about the information age is that it's no longer just enough to know, because information is everywhere. You can't just know, because everywhere you go, there is information. You get snippets from here, a headline from there, another snippet from here, and they all form and shape our views and ultimately our beliefs. If I had $1 for everything I've read that was sent to me, especially this week, and on both sides, not just whether you're for or against what's happening, and I'd have a bucket full of money. I'm pretty sure about that. But if we truly wanted to go within and critique ourselves and consider asking ourselves one question: how do you know what you know? Like, seriously, how do you truly know what you know? What informs you? What instills the fear in you? In my opinion, right now it's a time where it's just not enough to know. It is a time to know how to ask genuine questions of ourselves, and how to critique and critically assess the information we allow in, because we allow a lot in, and how to test our assumptions that we've brought to our own lives at this point in time. Because once you turn 35, and the science has proved this, you literally need to reinvent yourself, or you will continue to fall back on all the indoctrinations of others and your habits and the beliefs that have made up those first 35 years. You can do it. You can break it, and I'm living testament to that. Science has proven it through epigenetics. And like I said, as someone that's done the work, I can tell you it can be hard, but it is achievable. You can do it. And look, I'm not religious in any sense of organised religion, but I do love the stories and the fables within the Bible. And I think one of my favourites, I think it's Proverbs, is something like, the water only reflects what it's shown. And I think, what is it? So too, the heart reflects that of a true man. I love the fable because it calls out that we need to be accountable for ourselves, and to look within our hearts, and to make decisions based on the questions we ask and information that we discern. But we also need to hold space for people who may be hurting deeply, and people that we may not agree with. And we just can't see it, because they're not actually, that old reflection of the water is, they're only showing what they want to show you. You've got to go deeper in that. And that's kind of why I wanted to run these, and I'm so blessed to come across Jace, because he really has pearls of wisdom and I think we'll learn more of those as the weeks go through. It's also the reason why I try very hard to write with that intention and have zero judgment in my posts. So I don't always get it right, and I'm very aware when I'm deliberate, and I actually choose to ignore it when I'm deliberate. So that's probably not a great thing, but at least I'm aware in the moment. But with this information comes opportunity, and that time is right now. So your attendance at this webinar with this bloke who has spent 25 years delivering his craft suggests you're curious and you want to expand your thinking. So I'm going to ask Jason to speak about tonight's topic, which again is, are we giving away our authenticity in trying to fit into community or a set of beliefs? So Jason, welcome, mate.
Thanks, Jace. Thank you. Pleasure to be here, and thank you for your great leading.
Thank you. Before we start, though, I want to pick it apart. For me, I've got a definition of what authenticity means. What does it mean to you?
I believe all of us are not here to mimic. We're not here to repeat. We're not here to agree with anyone else. We're here to discover something that is within us. And authenticity to me is about an expression of our wholeness, not just what we're saying, but it's about bringing something that is unique and original from us and to become the authority of that. So in authenticity, we're not considering the future. We're not considering the past. It's about the wholeness of being present in this moment. But it is something that's practiced. I believe authenticity starts with vulnerability. And vulnerability is that space where we start to allow what is coming through us to, like a stream, to begin. And for many of us in vulnerability, we feel weak because it's when we're most powerful that we also feel most vulnerable, because we start to connect with what might not be so common, but our heart. And we hear those sayings of people that wear their heart on their sleeve. You know, it's those people that are prepared to put themselves out into other people's opinion, observation, and judgment, but are not looking to, through authenticity, we're not looking to convince anyone. We're just speaking our own truth. We're not looking to have someone agree with us. We are speaking it in our own resonance for our own self. And the very nature of that is to come to a space of authenticity, which is not so much something that we cultivate in an immediate moment. It's something that we come to understand about ourselves. But it's in the doing of that we start to come into our own resonance, into our own harmony, that what we do, our words and our actions become aligned as one. And we become a demonstration, the example of that, without expectation of how it's received.
Do you think we're heavily influenced by our outside environment?
I think we can pretend to be, that when we are not present to the moment. Look, I think when all of us know moments where we become immediately present, when we're doing something that's not right and someone suddenly comes walking the door, we become very present. When we're in the process of doing something illegal and the police were to turn up, we become very present. So we have the capacity to be present at any particular moment. It just depends upon how we want ourselves to be observed or seen at that particular point in time. So we become very present standing on the edge of a cliff when we have something of value that we may be looking to lose or not wanting to lose. So we can become stimulated and affected by our outside environment, but this is an old, I would say, manipulation of through psychology and through opinion to keep people in a controlled space, is to suggest that they're a product of their environment. They're a product of their environment to the degree that they're not present to who they are, and beyond that, what they are. So I don't believe, and I don't subscribe into the idea that we are a product of our environment. I believe the environment is a product of us. But for that to be the case, we have to step into that thing that is us, or the I am, or the individual part, where in being authentic, we're prepared to show ourselves, not to be accepted, but to be seen.
Yeah, totally. I think that's very well said. And I know a lot of people love Brene Brown, and I think she's taken that whole authenticity to a whole new level. And I seriously love her stories. I think they're fantastic. But if we moved on to community then, because they're the two key words out of this for me. I know when our business partner, or my business partner, Gary, at our juicing retreats we run in the beautiful little town of Yukai, he talks about community. He's deliberate with his deconstruction of the word, in that it is common unity. And if you split those words and you look at common and unity in isolation, it takes on a whole new meaning. What's your definition around that, mate?
I think common unity, community is something that people at times are drawn into because it's a kind thing or it's the right thing to do in order to toe the line or be part of a similar ideal. But the thing is, it's a higher form of expression. I mean, to me, energy, the highest energy is always seeking its greatest organization or its highest expression. So to have a significant amount of people with great intelligence and capacity to come together for the same cause, this is not something that just happens magically. Generally, communities these days are built in opposition to something, which is not really a community. That's a separation from a truth. And to
sorry, just to cut you off. So just to, as an example, it might be, I guess, what's happening today. So you've gone into a Facebook group or a YouTube group or whatever tech platform you like, because you're wanting to join part of a movement, but you're actually in opposition to what you truly want to change.
Yeah, well, I mean, the narratives that exist at the moment, there's a lot of them that are very polarizing. So for many of us, we can find similarity or common purpose to another person or to another group because we oppose the same enemy or the same thing that we don't agree with. So to me, that's not so much of it's become what a community has been built on, but those foundations are not about creation. Those foundations are about only existing as to oppose what's there. And that's why a lot of communities, once that particular opposition is gone, there's nothing there. So we're in a situation now where people are complaining about Daniel Andrews in the way that he's been running the state, and there's an opposition on either side or a support. But the thing is, once he is gone, that particular opposition subsides. But to be able to be remaining discerning, to be able to see, well, what we're now accepting in, is it any different to what we received? Because Daniel Andrews wasn't assessed the same way now as what he was 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years ago. This has only become apparent now. So do people need to wait until they get to that particular point in time before they suddenly say, well, this is wrong? This is what's been missing in, we've got to come to our own independence first. We've got to understand ourselves before we can go in and place a responsibility on others to agree with us or to have contribution being made. And this is a big part of the issue. Community is one of the most undermining aspects of growth and creativity. Until people come to find their own independence, a community is going to be the very degeneration of their own expansion and their own growth, because people get to a point, especially when something starts to develop significantly, that what occurs is that they don't have the opportunity to express themselves, and they again, in this newfound community, in this new space, they start to toe the line and again suppress their authenticity. And you know, the very nature of our own existence is to be different. It's not to be the same, but it's to add, once we have a level of independence within ourselves, we're able to accept, we're able to listen, we're able to integrate with others. And we're able to do so in the acceptance of what they say and what I say. And we recognize, look, when we come to our own independence, we recognize to get there, we've had to purge, we've had to release, we've had to let go of a lot of stuff. So we can allow that when someone loses their load because of an emotional response, or they're triggered in some way, if we're independent within our own selves and self-sustained, we can recognize that. And we can observe that without judging that person, because wisdom will not judge that person who is losing their shit. Wisdom will observe that this particular person is not normal behavior for them. So what I'm actually observing is them releasing, letting go. And if I can not buy into that and not react to it, I can allow that release to happen. And if I allow that release to happen, I can also acknowledge my own growth and my own presence in that space so that I can move forward and beyond. But the problem is, at the moment, is many of people's lives are stimulated by fighting against something else or finding righteousness in someone else's wrongness. And the very nature of that is not moving into a space of creativity or the space beyond this. It doesn't matter whether we believe if the virus is real or not. It doesn't matter whether we believe Daniel Andrews is good or not, or whether we believe any aspect or any person in what they are. That is the very, robbing ourselves of the very currency that we are, is our attention. Everything exists because of our attention and how we relate to other things. So this particular opportunity at the moment is for people to start to step into a space of, how did I invite this situation into my life? Because for that, we'd have to see our true significance. We'd have to accept our significance. And this is a part of, some very basic but general rules of life, of how we come into our attention, how we move beyond what it is that we're ingesting each day, how we move beyond if we're going to make enough money. Because when we come into our own attention, we go well beyond these things. We're not submitted into pain. We're not submitted into any forms of suffering. We start to find a truth. And I would suggest that many of us, when we're not fulfilling ourselves, we look for a community in order to be accepted. And this is not a problem of the individual. This is a problem of the education that we've been given up until now. And I think I spoke the other day about generational wisdom. We've got to look really deep as to, why is it that we do not have generations prior to us, and many generations, sharing wisdom with us? What is it that people have got to in their own life as a parent, where they don't have something significant to share with their children? And to me, this should be an alarm that's going off. That if I don't have something significant to share, well, what is it that I've acquired? What is it that's important to me? What is it that I would want the next generation to learn from within me? And this is, again, a big part of that, becoming an example and growing within ourselves. So we've got to recognize that there is a lot of pain that's out there at the moment. It's not because of any other reason, except for people have to purge. They have to release. They have to let go through this time. And a big part of that can only occur as people start to aspire into a greater space. We can't purge or let go. And like, you're saying with your juicing, they're not going to have that purge. They're not going to have that release without the intention to cleanse, to go to a place that is different or is removed from the current situation I have. So, and I think it's a big mistake in society and the confusions of psychology and a lot of teachings, is to understand that when we express ourselves, what we're releasing is not what we are. It's not what we're moving into. It's what we were. And at times we have to do that without a lot of eloquence or grace. And we have to allow ourselves the time to be able to do that. We have to allow ourselves a space to do that. So for me, I'd be encouraging people at this particular time is to make a deliberate space with themselves and ideally with others, where they can be sharing and releasing and letting go of the gunk, the thoughts, the ideas, at a minimum, be writing that down each and every day to be able to clear themselves. There's some very simple practices that creates a great amount of healing and a great amount of truth that people can move beyond. And I don't believe internationally there's enough people speaking about how people can move beyond this, because this is a very unique space. I would suggest that there's something significant and great coming into our lives. I believe that we're at the edge of a significant change that we will never understand until we have moved through it. And this is the type of thing that, for many of us, we're preparing ourselves for something grand, but we're not quite sure of what it is that we're moving into.
And I know that you and I know you and I spoke a few times during the week, and I think we spoke about a potential protest that may happen globally. And my question was, if I go back to, and I wasn't much of a uni academic, but if I go back to the whole questioning about, so what? So what does it prove if you go and if 1 million people march on Spring Street down in Melbourne? So what? You might roll it back and you might say, well, it'll make me feel good. I'll have a release. I'll vent. I'll be with like-minded people. So what? Well, we might kick Daniel Andrews out of power. You may or may not. But I think the question which you and I think I posed it to yourself and Laura, was what happens after this? It's like you reach the pinnacle of all this momentum. And if it does play out the way I hope it does, then happy days to all of us. And let's just assume it does for a moment. Then what happens to all that energy, that magnificent movement of energy? What do we do with it? Do people then get a little bit like religion, the highs and lows of being in a charismatic church? When you're up, it's fantastic. But when you're down, it's really, really tough. what are people going to do? Like, do they turn around, go home and go, shit, what's next? What do I do? Or do they go, what's next? I'm going to make sure that this never happens to me and my family. Again, I'm going to be active in what I do and deliberate in what I do as well. And I'm not going to make a decision from when I'm down here. I'm going to make a decision from when I'm up here and plan for the future.
Look, I think it's something that's really important point. Like you're saying, it's very interesting that when we come very close to the people in our lives, it's very much about how deep we can go and how much we expose ourselves. And at times when we release the most dark things within our own life, but we don't have a practice, even though that occurs each time, we don't have a practice with those close to us to release and talk about those things that are not supposedly positive. And what happens is, and it's mental illness is based upon this whole idea of suppression within our own self, that we continue to hold on to and we don't talk about the ability to move through something by bringing up the things that we're ashamed of, that we're guilty of, you know, and that becomes a toxicity that we then formulate into a disease. I mean, and that's what, you know, at this particular point in time, creativity or to create as an individual is what exists beyond this. And what I believe that this particular experience is showing us is how absent that we have been, but it's not about judging ourselves about it. It's about being present to the opportunity of what we can create. For many of us, we've been doing a lot of things that we don't want, and we've always had time to do the things we don't want. If we look at our day and we wrote down what we did of a day, we could recognize all the things that we have time for that we've never really wanted to do, but the things we've always wanted to seem to not fit into our day. But we always have time for the things that we don't enjoy, that we're obligated to. And that's probably a question that we want to start to ask ourselves, because that's then what creates the environment. We have a lot of things in our life that we don't enjoy, that we don't want. And we also don't recognize our own capacity and power to change that. So a lot of that comes from, if I'm investing in something and I want it to work, well, I have to put some time, some understanding into that. And if I don't do that within my own self, that's generally not going to occur. And I don't believe that this is an ignorance of people. I believe that people just don't know the how to. They've not, we've all got a theory, we've all got a word, we've all read, you know, we've got some opinions on how to do things and what once worked for us. But to truly understand, and if we truly understood the gold that existed within us, we would do everything we could to provide a foundation to be able to mine that and enable ourselves to express that in such a way. Because I would suggest a lot of us at the moment, we're so good at judging ourselves, we're so good at bringing ourselves down or blaming others, that we don't allow ourselves to see our own brilliance. We don't often speak of our own brilliance. I mean, we try to find some middle ground of what's acceptable that others will accept of us and that we'll accept of them. But it's quite rare that we would go in and confront, you know, the very dangers of what someone opposes or what has triggered someone before. But it's our capacity to hold space for someone as they go through that allows them to release it. Look, it's not natural for people to be obnoxious. That's not a normal thing. But a lot of people who are obnoxious haven't had someone who loves them enough to actually suggest to them, do you realize the way you come across? Because people have been too scared to do so because they don't want to get caught up in that particular result. So I think what's most important in this particular time of lockdown, I mean, for me, is most significant is to actually start to understand ourselves. You know, and how would I do that? And to come to a point, if I don't know how to do that, well, it'd be a perfect time to start learning that, to start to come to a recognition of that, to accept within myself that I have become adulted, meaning I've lost my authenticity.
And it's okay to ask those inconvenient, hard questions, which sometimes, as you rightly said before, we're too afraid to ask or to mention to the people that we love the most that in and around us as well. To have those, you know, too often we look for the safety net and we just go too hard.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and you know, a big part is not the questions; it's the ability to listen. When we're predisposed to listening, we also demand a better response. When we have an audience that is engaged, well, you'll have a greater level of information that is shared. The thing is, it is within our own self, if we are predisposed to taking action before we receive information from ourselves, we're going to receive, let's just, put it in this way, if we are in a situation where we're not prepared to act on the information that we receive, well, we're going to receive information that we're not prepared to act on. We are determining our environment. We are determining our results. So for each of us in this particular time, we might be wanting to protest. We might be wanting to be angry and frustrated. But the very nature of our own experience, it must come from within ourselves first. We've got to look at how it is that we manipulated ourselves to get to this particular point and ask some of those hard questions so we don't have to go back on this the next time, because we don't want there to be a next time. You know, this doesn't, we don't have to have everyone agree with us. We don't have to be all walking in lockstep. But what we do need to find within ourselves is what is true for us. A lot of, I can see a question that's there. I mean, as we start to express ourselves, one of the most important things that people fall into the trap of is they don't want to be judged by others. They're scared of how they're going to be seen. And at times, sometimes when I've got an opinion that they might have been holding back, it can also seem deceitful to their friends to say, well, how come you suddenly believe in this? But when we suppress that within our own self, we've got to realize that as we start to move forward in our own life, we're going to move into a new place where there's going to be discomforts. But it's to realize in our own truth, when we become present to our own life, when the light suddenly gets shined on it, there's a lot of discomforts that we suddenly have normalized and been putting up with for a long period of time. For example, this situation and the deceit, the corruption that's going on at this particular point in time didn't just start yesterday. No one would stand with their hand on their heart and say that the government has been above board and only been doing things as sustainable and brilliant and have actually been looking for things to improve my life. No one could honestly believe that to be the case, but it's not that the government are corrupt. The government are moving into the space that has not been owned by each individual. And, you know, this has been a part of the system that we're in. And it's about when we go to express ourselves in a way that's not common and normal, we are going to be judged. Part of exposure works with its opposition of judgment. So if we want to expose ourselves and we want to become more present, more aware, and more influential, what we have to learn to do is not speak out. We have to learn to deal with the judgments that will come, because they will come. There's no avoiding it. They are going to be there. So many of us look to become a better orator, become a better speaker, but it's not where the truth comes, not where the authenticity is delivered from the individual. It's in that person's presence to the fact that they are going to be judged, that people are not going to like it, that people are not going to agree with me, and maybe great friends will never want to speak to me again. But if I'm present to that, that's part of me coming into my own truth and exposing myself. So it's about, you know, getting past that sad thing that when we do start to share and when we do start to stand up, I would suggest to you that the people that argue most critically and most aggressively with you are the ones that agree with you the most. What you're actually stimulating within those individuals is a degree of suppression that they have within themselves. And when they first now have the opportunity to release it, it's going to come out in anger. It's going to come out in frustration. But it's for us to be able to understand the way in which we went through that so that we don't judge other people and stop their progress or their momentum forward. A lot of the time we've got this all around the wrong way, that we want everything of greatness to occur, but we want no blood to be spilt. We want everyone to be happy and joyous along the way, but we've got to realize we're a rich tapestry. We're a very definitive fabric of expression. And we've got so many different ways in which we see things, in which we do things. When we become truly engaged in what we are, it doesn't matter what someone else is saying or doing or not doing. We start to see ourselves, and in our own engagement, we don't have time to judge anyone else. And it's when we're going through that and progressing through that ourselves that we reach out to encourage others, because we recognize what it is to go through that. At the moment, we're fighting against a scourge of entitlement that people believe that other people owe them something. And that's the role the government's taken on. It's making decisions for many people, because when we come to the acceptance within ourselves that I've given up that opportunity to make those decisions. I thought they would make me that. I thought they had that under control. Isn't that what the government does? And it's, you know, I learned at a very young age of getting up to too much mischief that going to court, that ignorance is not an excuse. And it's something that stood with me for a very long time. And it's really driven, a deep level of responsibility that beyond a statement that if it's going to change or my life is going to be what it is, it's completely up to me. But it's to understand that in every aspect of our own life, that what we have at the moment, our sufferings, our challenges, is to recognize I created that. But it's not about beating yourself with a stick. It's simply about becoming aware, because until we identify the starting point, we can't move forward. Until we accept that we have dug a hole for ourselves, we cannot start to change to fill that hole in to stand up on top of the ground again. If we're not present to the hole being there, we're going to stand in that hole and wonder why it's difficult for us to see the view that's around us. Yeah. Our perspective will stay the same. So in our acceptance and our vigilance and our resilience to be able to see exactly what exists, we become present to the opportunity we have in moving forward. And
so just to interrupt. So if I had to, I'll summarize that in a second, but if we stood in that ground, and ego can be good, and for me it can be good and bad. You can pat your chest and you can look at the ego of a person and call them arrogant. Equally, fear can dictate ego as well. What are some things you've seen or observed where people have successfully peeled that away?
Peel their ego away, or
ego, yeah. And remembering I'm not suggesting, because most people think of ego as the CEO, oh, he's got a massive ego, or the sports guy that, shit don't stink, or whatever it might be. But ego equally holds us back, because fear plays a part in your ego. Is everything. It's just not one thing. It's omnipresent, it's everywhere, and it's all things. So yeah, I guess the answer is, my question would be, what have you seen that would peel that away to help people get back to who they truly are?
Yeah, well, I mean, the ego is just a state of disintegration. So when we're integrated and we're fulfilling our own space, we're present, and the ego is a part of us, but it plays a role, but it doesn't dominate. When we are disconnected or disintegrated from ourselves, our ego is our guide, because we refer to the past, we refer to other people's information, we refer to everything that exists outside of us, because we're not choosing to bring our intuition or our attention upon us in this particular moment. Intuition in the ego is far stronger than what it is when we are connected to our own self and truth, because it's what we're used to doing. It's predisposed, and it's what everyone else around us is conditioning us to do. So intuition is not some spiritual skill that is developed because we've reached a level of enlightenment. It is just the ability that we have as a sense to interpret information as an energy into information. But our ego itself is a choice to not be present. The thing is, we've got to understand how we're doing that. And when we start recognizing that, well, then we can start to make a different choice. Now, there's very, very simple processes that are based in frequency that you can do in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes a day to get yourself into a different state of integrated frequency. And, the ego is when the body and the energetic space, let's say the body and the soul, are separated. They're not aligned. And it's the distance between the body and the soul which creates the mind. And from the mind, the ego is spawned. Now, when the body and the soul are working together as one, we're integrated. We're engaged. Time is irrelevant. We are engaged in what we're doing. We are living in the moment. And it's often when we're so engaged in what we're doing, we suddenly look up and realize the time that we come out of that space. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening at the moment, is that if we're not engaged in our own life, and we're not choosing to do the things that we love and are courageous enough to do that, and we're choosing to not be in that particular space, we're going to be dictated to other people's timelines. Knowledge, which is just information and opinions from the past. To be able to step into the vibrancy of what happens right now, it's not easy when we have been conditioned to do things in a very different way. We've been educated to conform to having the same answer. We've been educated to act in a particular way where someone else in a classroom has all the answers and is the authority. We've been taught to acquiesce so much of what we are. So these are not things that we need to beat ourselves up about. These are just things that, oh, wait a second, this is what I've done. But now I'm present to that, and now I have a starting point. I can choose to change that. So that the ego itself is something that never should be dismissed. The ego just needs, like everything, to be understood. And in every part of our own life, when we understand something, we dissolve it in the moment. I mean, I don't believe in there's any need for healing. I believe that this is, one of the greatest problems that is existing, and modern medicine has taken that to a completely different extreme of taking away people's decisions and responsibility for their own self. When we come to understand what we are, we become completely responsible. When we understand what our father was saying to us when we were younger, what that kid did to us, when that partner left me, my heart was broken, why they did it and what that was about. When I allow myself to come into a state of integrity and understand that, I don't need healing. That dissolves in that moment. What I need is courage within my own self, and the ability to be able to learn to express myself authentically and gracefully. And it's about using what we already have. If look, put it this way, Jason, if we understand what we are and we're complete within what we are, and we can start from that point, our only seeking is to understand that, because that's what we elevate into a state of aspiration. But when we believe that we're starting from a compromised place where there's a problem, there's something that we are not able, and this is the ego, which is, for me, the ego is about who I am. My truth is about what I am, and who I am is in relation to all the other who's. So as I compare myself and as I look at myself in comparison to others, the issue that I have is I'm trying to achieve a level of status, a level of acceptance from others, which will never be satisfied. But when I can do that within my own self, and I'm able to sustain myself, I can experience love in a way where I'm not demanding or needing someone to deliver something to me that I can't deliver to myself. And I can start to see that person, that experience, that environment for exactly what it is. And I can then start to appreciate its beauty. But I don't appreciate its beauty when I don't feel fulfilled and I want, and that thing needs to be something to fulfill me in order, and I have to manipulate it to change it in order for me to be served, if that makes sense.
For me, it does, and I'd be very keen to hear if people are understanding all this as we go through. I'll be very open and candid as I am. When I first spoke with Jason, we spoke for about an hour and a half, and I had to put him on pause about 50 times because a lot of this stuff he spoke about, it just because of the way I've been indoctrinated in life and the way I've been taught and the way I've taught myself, it just didn't sink into me. But the more I take myself out of that old way, and I think I mentioned earlier, your first 35 years, they seriously are forming everything you believe in your brain. You literally, and through epigenetics, you can undo all that. And I guess in a sense, we're talking about it tonight, that you have to do the work to rewind that. Otherwise, you'll continue living basically in the past of everything you've done. And it's very hard to move forward when you can't let go of those either. You just stay there, you remain stuck, in my opinion. But if I just have to summarize that part then, so this will be hard for people to cop, really, because what essentially we're saying is we are where we are because we've not asked the right questions along the way. We've not tested what is happening around us, and we just pretty much, and not a criticism because I'm that person, we blindly trusted the government is doing the right thing. And that lack of questioning has led us to where we are today. The upside, and maybe we've just lost the art of thinking as well. Critical thinking, I mean,
I would say thinking just as a word would be something that we'd want to remove from the language, because to me, thinking is the excuse we make before we take action. That there's no purpose to thinking except to avoid our own natural expression. To become aware is a very different thing, but thinking as a practice is, no one thinks about anything except for my inability to take action at this particular point. We're not meant to be perfect in our actions going forward. We're going to be clumsy. We're going to fall over. We're going to make mistakes. And we need to accept that, but that's a part of our learning. But we don't need to make mistakes to learn, but there's also an opportunity that occurs within that. But our thinking is, to me, we're either doing one thing, where we're taking action, or we're thinking. And our thinking is, when we think, is that we're looking for reasons to justify why not to take action. It's very rare that when people look into a state of awareness, they then become aware of how they can move forward. But thinking is predetermined to find reasons to not act. And that in itself is just a different frequency and state that we can instill within our own self. I mean, we can bring pain and heartache and suffering to ourselves in any moment. as a reaction. But contradictory to that, we can bring brilliance, love, genius to ourselves as a frequency. It's a cellular experience. And we have the ability to command that at any particular moment. And, this is the type of information that has been taken or restricted or removed away in favor of modern science, which again is just an observation. There is no truth to science. There is an individual's observation of what they're seeing. And for many of us to be able to raise above that, it's a challenging and difficult thing. I mean, why is it that we're suppressed in actually sharing things that could cause people to cure themselves in some way? And it's something that I've been, honestly, I've restricted what I've said for a long period of time in people being able to overcome any illness, and observing that consistently and regularly is because of the fallback and the amount of times I've been advised not to share and not to say that, and watching people, I suppose, struggle through generalized ideas and medications when the answer is simple. When we're in an integrated state, in the same thing that happens through fasting, but at an energetic level, our body automatically realigns and our life becomes obvious to us. It's not about looking what's around us and trying to fix it with the tools that we have. When we're in pain and suffering around us, it's just an indicator. It's like a red light going on the dashboard, just to say that we're not integrated. We're not in our own state of presence. So we don't need to fix the problem we see. We need to recognize it's a time to come into our own attention. We've fallen off.
Can I just bring, so there's people online that I can see now, both on my Facebook page and also on Zoom that will strongly resonate with, and there's a few of us that follow the teachings of the Cowboy Don, and we love him, and I know Inga's there, and I know Gaz and Jules are there as well. I think everything you just said would resonate strongly with them. I just want to question one thing, challenge you actually on one thing on thoughts though. So if I'm about to, and I'll go back to my corporate days, if I'm about to present to 1,000 people in a group, and which I actually didn't mind, but I felt sick about it, or I had to make a decision where it's going to impact someone's life, their livelihood at work, I might have to sack them, whatever it might be. My thoughts literally can make me feel sick. I can feel crook in the stomach, nauseated, short of breath, whatever. Then on the flip side of that, if your thoughts can make you sick, can your thoughts then make you well?
Absolutely. There is no, look, I know who you spoke of before, but it's not in contrast. That's just about me speaking my truth. Food, like medicine, works depending upon the environment that it's going into. It doesn't change the environment. Our capacity to be able to be present to our deeper truths, what we are, not who we are, not as a medical subject, not as a physical flesh and blood and a system, but we've got to understand that our thoughts can elevate us in significant ways, but it's not our thoughts, it's our awarenesses that come to us from an integrated state. And the very nature of in our own life is to be able to learn by letting go, because our true capacity to let go is when we see value in ourselves, when we believe that we can recreate, when we can expand, when we can evolve, when we understand how to do that consistently and regularly. We'll be happy to let go of the structure that's holding us up at this particular point. We'll let go of that relationship that is not serving us for fear of not being able to find a better one. We'll stop compromising our situation in order to satisfy our fears or securities or our current needs. So look, there's nothing. I mean, we talk about an alkaline environment, we talk about different foods and their capacity. Absolutely, they're there. But food has become a religion as people have moved away from their own spiritual sense. And again, it's not going to have the effect in time of what people are now coming into. It's a new experience. People are opening up to it, they're present to it. And for maybe a generation or so, that will be maintained. But the real truth that exists is in our ability to be able to maintain, not get to, but maintain an integrated state within our own being. Look, sickness is a gift within our own self, and if we can understand it, because it's often pain is just something that's ignored. It's a communication that we are not becoming present to. And the only thing that makes that real is our ability to be able to interpret that. So to me, excuse me, It's not about acquiring wisdom. It's about understanding how to navigate our own self, to become first present to what we are working with, to remove ourselves from the indoctrination of other people's experience, but to, once we have found discernment within ourselves, once we've created that relationship, it's at that particular point that we can listen to the most wise souls that exist, that have been blessed to be a part of our own life, that we can look to what is relevant of that information for us, that we don't have to sit there and be indoctrinated because this person has experience or expertise beyond our own. There is no one that has greater experience or expertise than you about you. And often we are silenced in the idea of, modern schooling, expertise structures that are there that cause us to not be able to recognize the truth in ourselves. I had a relative with me last night, and they were talking of the pain that they had, and I said, well, why don't you just stop and get silent and just ask, what is this? And listen. If anyone can do this at a basic level. I said, the challenge you're going to have is listening and then acting upon what you're hearing, because you think, oh no, that's crazy. But you've sat here and you've told me about 5 or 6 different times, it could be this from my leg. Oh, there was that one time I did that. Oh, actually, when I was through the week and was investing and buying into all of these possibilities, rather than just, wait a second, why don't I go to the source? This pain is just a communication that I'm feeling, I'm getting feedback on. Well, why don't I have a conversation here? It seems crazy because that's what we're being led to believe. Yeah. But that's basic. Anyone can do that. What we need, what the development and responsibility is how we actually discern to a point where we trust it.
Yeah, because we know the body will never try and kill itself. I mean, we have strong views around, autoimmunity. Is it real, or is there something deeper that exists that we just haven't worked out what it is yet? I mean, cancer in and of itself is an incredible gift, because your body literally creates tumors to pull in all that stuff that it wants to expel. I think where we've lost our way, and to your point, and you're spot on the money, is that we tend to outsource that, and we take a pill. I've got diarrhea, I need to block it rather than let it go. I'm vomiting, I need to take something to settle the stomach, or the phlegm through the nose, or the headache, so I can, desensitize the pain and cut the nerve that's signaling the pain to me. We don't actually sit in it and try to understand what it is that's causing it.
I think a large part of what's happened in society, which is becoming very evident today, that how powerful a government has become in determining our own wellness and the way in which we operate, interact, and talk. It's become tyrannical, but it's got to this particular point to cause people to wake up. But the very nature of the sicknesses that are about are simply because we haven't learnt within our own self to give ourselves time and attention. And the thing that is, the greatest sickness that's here is that we don't know how to love ourselves. And that might be, a really common, a nice, I suppose, would you call it a new age, statement. You've got to learn to love yourself, got to have self-love. But you see, what we are as individuals is we are attention. And where we direct our attention is where life goes. And the thing is, if we can direct, like my son exists for my attention. He doesn't play up and become disruptive when I'm giving him attention. When I'm not giving him attention, he will do everything possibly that will gain my attention, generally in frustration rather than in love. But in the same way, because we're not used to giving ourselves attention, and I don't mean just lying down or laying in a hammock or relaxing or going for a walk, I mean genuine attention and understanding how to do that. That when we don't then receive it from others when genuine love is given to us. And the issue that we have is that we've become bereft of that we become so susceptible to disease and a whole range of other conditions, and now mental illness, and we're being told we've become vessels that don't have a rudder. We've become so used to being told what is happening, what is good for us, what's not good for us, and therefore we jump off sugar, we jump into this, we jump off that, we jump into this, because that's what people are telling us, because we haven't taken the time to come to be our own audience, to be our own understanding of and the receiver of our own attention.
Hey mate, we've had a few questions tonight, and I'm just looking down here because I'm picking up off my phone, and we've kind of covered a lot of them. There is one here that I want to cover off from Kate, and that is how would you suggest we move through fear or being seen or rejected if we truly express ourselves?
Yeah.
Good question, Kate. Thanks.
Yeah. I feel that the very nature of, we went through this a bit before about exposing ourselves, that, you know, we are going to be rejected. The very nature of being rejected is about letting go of the parts of our own selves that are no longer a part of us. When we get rejected, it's our ability to be able to accept ourselves. So it's a very significant part, that if we want to step into a place where we want to create our own life, rejection is extremely important. But it's understanding, I suppose, how to be able to deal with that. And the best way to deal with that is to recognize what the benefits are of being rejected, what it is that creates within me. But the purpose of life is to continually move forward and create momentum towards something that's worthy for us. So rejection becomes minimized and dissolved in our own life when we become clearer on what it is that we are existing for and what it is that we want to create. So when what it is that we want to create is evident in our own life and present in our own life, rejection becomes still something that's there and still something that's significant. But it's the reminder of what we now focus on. Yes, I was rejected, but I'm rejected because of what I'm suggesting and what it is so important to me. I had the courage to present that, because that is what I'm pursuing my life towards. And generally what happens with rejection is it causes us, like now, it's causing us to elevate and find a deeper source within our own self, to find a different level of expression of how I would go about now expressing that so that I don't get rejected next time. I have to now reconsider. I can't do the same thing again and again and again. I have to now find a different way to express what is important to me. I have to find grace in the way that I express myself. And this is a large part of all of us, that we have that challenge in saying no. And because we don't want to be rejected ourselves, we generally don't reject others. And I would suggest for people to understand the very nature of our own life and our own authenticity and empowerment is to recognize how we can learn to say gracefully no to someone else. How we can do so to be accepted by ourselves in doing so, because we're not doing it to harm someone. Yeah. We're not doing it to cause someone pain. But what we're doing it to do as an example is how to elevate and show courage in our own self.
Thank you. I think Kate can, I'll chat with her later. I'm sure she'll appreciate that answer. I think also as you move through this, sometimes you lose people along the way. I've found that in my life. So I've got plenty of acquaintances on the fringe that I like to chat with occasionally, but I have to keep it at fringe because there's a very big disconnect between where I am as a person now to where I was, 12, 13 years ago. And yet my community, and I use that word, common unity, has just gone through the roof in the last, 8 years since my wife and I have started changing the way we look at ourselves and look after each other and our mind, our body, and our spirit. It's been a revelation. So if anyone out there is kicking it off and starting it, then stay the course, because it really is worth it. I have people in my life that don't agree with me, and some of them are very, very close to me, and we have that mutual respect of that's okay. I don't have to. But letting go of that fear of being rejected was the key for me. Like, shit, my mate didn't agree with me. Well, bad luck, I've got 10,000 mates that probably do agree with me now. But even more important, to your point, I shouldn't even look for that endorsement at all.
No, I mean, I think that's a part of the whole point, that if you understand why it is that you're expressing yourself and for what purpose, as long as it sits with you and you become resolved to that, that's what's going to make a difference. And I think one of the most important points that you said there, and I look at with a lot of our work and teaching, is, there's a lot of, I know when I was learning, there's a lot of complicated philosophies, which basically mean that they don't really work. It's the things that can be refined and simple, and it's what I've learned that can be repeated that are most powerful. Letting go in itself and saying no is one of the most powerful things that anyone can do. It's if we look at our life from a cellular perspective, it regenerates itself consistently and regularly. So there should be nothing that ages us. There should be nothing that deteriorates us. If everything that we are is regenerated over a short period of time, effectively in our own life, the only thing that keeps us sick is what we hold on to, what we're not aware of how to let go of, and ideally let go of gracefully. And this is not just an ideology or a concept. This is a truth that people are looking for things to age because they don't want to let go of the certain things in their life. They don't want to be let go of the reputation they had or how they were seen or the things that were once valuable. So letting go in itself is by far one of the greatest and the strongest, most powerful things that we can learn to do. But it is the absolute foundation to learning and maintaining wisdom. Because many of us, I don't read and I don't advocate reading. I believe the capacity to read for sure, but the idea of sitting with a book for 400 to 600 pages to me is not about the acquiring of wisdom. That's an entertainment. That might be as part of what we would do for a non-fiction book if that's where we wanted to go. But to sit and learn and read 400 or 500 pages is completely against an understanding of the way in which we operate.
Yeah.
But in order to receive, we need to be purging equally and ideally more. And if that's not a part of our life, it's one of the things that I'd recommend that, and going back to Kate's question, I think it was Kate, that with the rejection, we've got to recognize at times when we're in service to our own life and being our own example, when we do something that creates rejection and causes a response, we are doing something extremely beneficial for that individual. For someone that has the capacity to allow themselves to release that is their ability to start to cleanse and clean themselves. What they are letting go of is not something they're at ease with, there's something that they're not at ease with. And our ability to be able to prompt that, not for that intention, not to trigger them, but in order to serve ourselves, is one of the greatest things that we can start to do again, as long as we don't react to it and get engaged in it, because then it becomes, again, something we oppose, and we will get pulled down into that particular situation, which is about their healing, their letting go. We've been taught as big hard drives where we've been forced so much information upon our own selves, we become confused that it's difficult to move forward because there's so many different masters that we're serving through different forms of information.
I think if I just took that back to my when I did about 1,800 hours of cancer research, and I am not a radiologist. I'm not a oncologist. I'm just a guy that did 1,800 hours of research in cancer in the last 2 years. And if I paired it back, and this is my opinion only, I'm very conscious that it's not the reality of the world. My finding was that the underlying philosophy of cancer is wrong. And if you look at cancer in and of itself, they tell you it's a cellular disease. Now, there is new science, and it was out there when I was doing my research, which suggests it's more like a mitochondrial metabolic disease. And that when I read the science on that, and there is science about it, it really made sense to me. I go one step further, and I know that my mate Gaz and I, my business partner Gaz and I will talk about it. He'll say that it's actually, everything starts with chaos in the body, and I think you've kind of alluded to that anyway. But when I approached the medical and radio oncologist about cancer as a metabolic disease, the very answer I got was, and I almost quote unquote was, mate, my kit bag is low high dose chemo, bit of radio, and hormone therapy. That's it. And it got me thinking, and it got the person I was with thinking at the time about, well, hang on, if that can't be the only thing, there's got to be more. And so when you go away and you do 1,800 hours of research, which is almost like a degree to an extent, the amount of research I did, I actually started challenging whether the underlying foundations or philosophies we are taught, especially around cancer, are actually wrong at the very beginning, and therefore everything moving forward is incorrect. That's just my opinion only, because chemo and radio works for some people, and a lot of that's in the headspace too, so I would never say don't do it. I'm just saying test your assumptions and make sure that you're happy with where you are when you come to that decision or that landing, that outcome.
Yeah, I think there's a study that's been doing the rounds recently, and And if this is to me why one of the most important things is discernment, because there is so much information at the moment, and it's our ability to be able to make decisions on that information, which makes it intelligent. The information needs to be looked at what is relevant to me before I can then make it intelligent to act upon it. So when there's a study that was done, and many people may be already aware of this, but I believe it's an important thing to reflect upon as a truth that after the Second World War, there was some horrific studies that were done, and it's different to today. But maybe those studies are now done behind closed doors. But there was a whole range of infants, and I mean breastfed age infants that were put into two separate spaces, and one of that group was given attention and love and care and were played with each day, where the other group was given nutrients, best breast milk and wet nursing and so on, but given no attention, to the extent of covering their face when they went in there and providing no attention to those babies at that time. Now, they did this study until such time that the children died. Now, the children that died first were the ones that had the nutrients, but no attention. What sustains people, if we start to really understand that, is that we're energetic. That is the part of us that is maintained. And when that energy can flow through our physical body, there isn't anything that has dominion over us. We determine that it does. So the very nature of these diseases that are there, there's no two cancers that are the same. There's aspects of them that are. But for many of us, like you said with this doctor, and there's amazing medical doctors, there's amazing people in every industry. Yeah. It doesn't mean that the industry is right. But the very nature of that is you notice that, well, wait a second, if he was to say that he was an expert in those three areas, for 90% of people, that would be significant. That would be right. Well, you've got my trust. But it's the very nature of our own selves that we've been allowed to avoid our significance. And, the biggest challenge that we've got coming in the next decade, and look, when I work at deeper at a private level, and you see this in other programs we run, but the greatest thing that people come to avoid is their own significance. They're very happy to speak about the problems they've got and the challenges that they have because there's an audience for that. But for us to be able to speak our truth, to be all one, not alone, but all one, is we have to start to have a conversation around our brilliance and what we're really capable of and start to see the capacities that we have. Because we feel it occasionally, we see it occasionally. But it's about getting into a place where we can make that a habit, where it's autonomic, where it happens without effort. And this is about, what we are moving into, what we're being called to do at the moment. It may be challenging, it might be uncomfortable for a short period of time. But the very nature is to move, like we said at the beginning here, is what am I creating beyond this? Yeah. How much attention can I put beyond what all of those other people are doing to really, truly create? Because that is where success truly exists in life, is when people look to what it is that they want to create and maintain their attention into the unknown. That's what we all fear, is our ability to be able to navigate what we have not before. It's when we go into the pure darkness that we bring forward unseen light. And that unseen light is our authentic expression, what has not been seen previously. But we have to go and be prepared to go into that darkness. I don't mean evil and demonic. I mean places that are not previously explored because we simply don't know how to navigate them. And that's, to me, it's not about personal development, it's about personal governance. And when we can start to actually move away from these teachings that keep us, in a loop where we're satisfied with one breakthrough, or we're satisfied with talking about a coincidence or an alignment that happened in my life, we only notice them because they're not common. There's nothing to celebrate about, this thing that happened and we keep repeating the story. That's what we've come to accept. And that's the sad thing in my eyes, that once we recognize how simple it can be, these things just, we demand them, but we've been taught that that's selfish. And it's kind of ironic that, for me, that the thing we fear is space, but the unknown is space as well. So the very thing that can liberate us is also the thing we've been taught to fear. And the very thing that we have to be able to move forward is also the thing that we're judging. It's a lot of it at this particular point in time we're getting the opportunity to reset in so many different ways. I mean, from the financial system and a whole range of things that are coming, we need to look beyond this narrative of a virus, because it's what's happening beyond the virus that is of great significance. And when we can start to see our own significance, we can start to receive that. And as we don't need to get to a destination to achieve something. We just need to make the decision to walk that path. And when we do, everything starts to align in our favor. But that is because we are organized in our awareness. We are directed in our thoughts, because everything that we see that supports it, we can bring that to us. But what it doesn't, we then have the opportunity to say no to it. And that's the challenge that we have, is that when we choose a direction, but we continue to keep saying yes to the things that do not perpetuate and do not maintain that direction, for the fear of the impact that it might have upon those around us. When we are, I would say, and I'd use this word, arrogant, to believe that our actions have an impact upon others and they can't deal with that themselves. And that's what's made people weak, as we've seen a disability or an incapacity in someone, rather than an ability to be able to see their difference, their beauty, and be able to elevate that, rather than look at someone because they're different. Mm-hmm. That's where, I mean, this is a big part of what we're all, it's the elevation of our own self and our own beauty, is to be able to bring forward our difference, not to be the same. Love's not about similarities. Love is about difference. I heard you speaking about yourself and your partner, how you have some opposing views on some things, and that's what makes it beautiful. That's what makes it real. That's the real sense of a relationship, that I'm not just getting told yes, 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 or patted on the back. That's where deceit happens, because deceit is in a relationship. And if it's not exposed in the way that, to be honest and be prepared to be rejected by someone else, that relationship will never strengthen. And that's, I would say, going back again probably to Kate's question, because I think it's a relevant thing for everyone, is the rejection, is that's our insight also letting us know that when we fear rejection from someone else, it suggests the fragility of that relationship. And that's the thing to question. Not being rejected, but why it is that I'm maintaining a relationship that is fragile in its true nature. Why it is that I'm maintaining, and it might be even with a family member that you don't want to lose, or you're going to be a part of your own life, but it's a matter of, them was saying before, about letting go. There's a word, and we can see so much truth in words, but the word release. Release is about letting go in order to create something new. It's re-entering into something. But if we don't let go of things, we do not honor our own growth, our own advancement. That's what many of us do, is we have insights, awarenesses, and progression in our own life. But when we don't release old relationships, we can't then form new ones from our own state of growth. And we continue to acquiesce or undermine our own growth in order to support and maintain a facade of what we used to be. Mm. And that's, look, there's nothing that, I wouldn't say there's anything easy about life, but it's very simple. We just got a brilliant habit of complicating.
We do it well, and I think if I had to think back to 20 years ago when I first met Nick, it was pretty much like that from day one for us, and I think we've tested each other, but we've leaned into that and respected each other so well, and it really is. It's just a place where I love waking up every day, and it's a place where I love to be, So, but it's not easy, There's times where she's got such an academic mind where I feel like just, give her a bit of slap across the head, going, no, just listen to me, just agree with me. But of course, that's not who she is, and that's not where I get my learning. So, yeah, it's a great thing. I did have a question sent to me today. I'll ask it, and then if people need to go, they can. I'll just wrap it with this. But the question was, too often it seems we're looking for the abridged version of what is important to people rather than doing the work. And for me personally, I've been guilty of that in the past. I try not to do it now. Some days it's probably easier to take the blue pill versus the red pill. Why do you think a lot of us, essentially we're outsourcing the responsibility, give me the 3-minute bridge version versus doing the work? Why do you reckon we're like that?
Because we don't want to change.
We just want to stay stuck where we are, and we don't want to do. And no wonder your business your passion is the quantum movement, because it makes so much sense. It really does, because it is a big shift from where most of us are now, because we become, whether we like it or not, complacent, maybe not apathetic, maybe that's not the word, but we become very still in this environment where we go, oh, I'm just comfortable and comfortable and comfortable. And I think for me personally, it'll get to a point where I get to I'm about to breathe my last breath and I'll go, geez, I wish I'd done more.
But the thing is, I would say, Jason, where we're not comfortable. And that's like you're saying there, we have to keep making that decision that we're comfortable. We have to keep convincing ourselves that we're comfortable. It's all right here. It's okay. And we can say, oh, it could be worse if we go this, could happen. Oh, it's actually okay here. So at every particular time we question our environment, we have to make a decision to stay there. The difference is that it's the same thing in life. When we decide to create change, most of us want to create change and make one decision and then it be done. But it's understanding that when we want to make change, we have to keep making decisions through different layers. To me, there's 7 different layers of a decision at any particular point that goes from chaos to ease, to connection, to awareness, understanding, and through to completion and action. And we've got to understand that there's different layers. If we're aware of that, we become patient and we allow ourselves to move through these things. And that's what's most important. The issue is, look, you said before, and to me, chaos is simply a choice to move out of the nothingness. And when we take something from that collective nothingness that we want to bring forward, it is disorganized in our own life. To bring organization and truth to it, we have to be able to be present to what that chaos is. We have to first become at ease with it. And our focus is not trying to fix the chaos, it's to become at ease with the presence of chaos. And once that is there, then we're able to make a decision to move forward. And once we make a decision from a calm space, then it occurs, then we move forward. But for many of us, we don't want to become calm. We don't want to become present to the problem or the negativity. I mean, I would, without going into, oppositions and deeper spaces here, and I believe people can follow their own journey or ask questions if they want into this, but there is such an organized level of control that we've been under. Things have not happened by mistake. But the thing is, it's in time moving forward is to look into things that you haven't agreed with. But if it's been in control of you, take example of how organized it is and the degree into which something has been organized in order to create something significant. What that requires is our own attention to be able to bring organization to something in our life that we want, that is coming through us. And more often than not, we want someone else to organize it. We want someone else to make the decision. So we can be then disappointed at the end of it and point a finger and say, well, you didn't do it well enough. And it's not my fault, it's your fault. And we get caught up in that right or wrong state. But that abridged version is very much, comes a lot from the idea that people, I will say this as a point, is that time as a concept is dead, and it is the measurement of death. We are going to move beyond that. And I can guarantee this will happen. We are moving into space. And I don't mean space by out there in the galaxy. I mean that when we work with space, when we operate in space, when we live in space, we are engaged. It's timeless. And we've all had the experience that when we have been so present to something that we become our environment. It's when we start to consider time, when we start to look to the past, to the future, it is something that's been imparted upon us that is dissolving, and eventually time won't be a factor. When we can start to step past time and find passion in our life through a deep connection with ourselves, time's irrelevant. We do what it is that is present to us in that particular moment. We move past all the ridiculous natures of knowledge and observations of science. I mean, who needs to really know how the body works if we can tap into the authority of that? And if we can get the information we need to enjoy our experience here, we don't need to create academics. We don't need to remember information. This is like the nature of the word mind is to hold on to. It's all a play on words. It's a spell that we're being put under. And the mind itself, even just saying it, causes that type of reaction and response. It's about being in the moment and present and being off script.
I reckon that's probably a nice place to wind it up tonight. That was fantastic, mate. I really do appreciate your insights. Thank you so much. I know that the people who are living, I'm just reading some of the comments here as we go through it now. Thank you, Inga. And I quickly flick over to Facebook. I'll just make sure there are no questions there that I can see that we haven't answered already. No, there's not. So thank you, mate. That was first class, and I appreciate you. I appreciate the fact that you're giving up your time, your energy, your wisdom, and you're taking people on a journey. And I've got to say, like I said at the beginning, for me, it was, you're probably 3 or 4 steps removed from where I am. And it's not until I decided, and I'm an inquisitive person by nature, I think, but it's not until I decided to do the work that I then listened to every word and read every word and didn't skip over words that I didn't understand. I actually went back and I think called you up a few times, because if I didn't, then I would never have learned the way I learned, but I would never have actually moved forward. And I think what you're saying is this: there is so much opportunity for us right now to move beyond this current realm.
It's nearly embarrassing how much opportunity there is, and at times that's what's overwhelming, is the opportunity that does exist. I would just say, for those people that are there tonight, like, we're doing this in order for the benefit of others. I could sit and talk as long as, you know, I'm given opportunity to, and that's just the way that I am. I love what I do. But if you're going to come back into the coming weeks, we're going to do this for at least another couple of weeks, and to support what people are going through to find difference, but bring questions. I mean, we're here in service. This is not about me sitting and exposing and hearing my own voice. This is about, find some vulnerability within yourself. What do I want to change? And make the conversation about you. Indulge yourself. Happy to answer whatever questions there are, and however that can be dictated going forward. But I would suggest that the more that can be done, and the more that that's allowed, the greater the benefit can be to those listening, if they believe that there's something that they can gain from what it is we're sharing.
Yeah, and power to them if they do, and I guess power to them if they don't. It rolls both ways. Okay, well, thank you, my friend. We'll be in touch, no doubt. I do appreciate everyone who was on live tonight, or who may watch this at a later date. Thank you for your curiosity, I guess, and for wanting to listen and perhaps move past what it is we're currently in, and probably see it for what it is, and see beyond that. Because I think to make decisions in our lives, we tend to, and I think it may have come from you today, Jason, we spoke, but most of us make decisions when we're down here, when we're looking to get out or fix something, and not when we're riding the wave where we should, because that's when we're at our absolute best. We're on top of the wave, we're riding the 2 metre swell, we've got our shortboard out in the 2 metre, and yet we're not really making decisions when we're at our best. We make them when we're looking to solve. And I think the more I think of that, the more I think about how I can change the way I do my thinking, my decision making as well with information. Careful not to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, it's simple and beautiful. It's to plant in fertile soil.
Yeah, nice. All right. Well, good night, everyone. Thank you so much, and we hope that you'll be back. And I said, as Jay said, maybe come next week with a question. 7:30, same time. I'll send reminders out. We're going to do 2 more. And so we'd love you to be part of this. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, and good night.
Thank you as well, and thank you, Jace. Thank you for holding the space and everything you've.
Yeah, and to you and Laura, mate. Thank you so much.
All right.
Cheers, and bye.